Hello. I am Kathryn VanArendock. I work at Vulture. I am so happy to be here with you all tonight. We have an incredible panel of late night writers, and I am so thrilled to be able to talk with all of them, and you guys get a chance to ask questions. So without further ado, let me begin introducing them. Let's start with Liz Hynes, who works for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And then we'll have Jill Twiss from Have I Got News for You? Zhubin Parang from The Daily Show. Jon Glaser from They Call It Late Night with Jason Kelce. Alison Gates from SNL. Hagel from Seth Meyers. Did I get everyone? Did I miss anyone? We got Zhubin, we got Jenny, we got Alison.
I think you got it, yeah.
Excellent. It is such a delight to be here with all of you. I want to start by asking you all the same question. We can start with Jenny and then just come down the line. How did you get your first writing job, and how did you get this writing job?
My first writing job, I went to grad school for TV writing, and I did an internship at a network called Logo, which is notable because it's for gay people, but gay people don't watch it. And after I finished my internship, a week later, I went back to Chicago, and the guy I had been interning for was like, "Hey, I was just in a meeting, and they have this show that a sketch show, and I asked if you could submit a packet, and they said yes." So I did, and then that's how I got that job. And then I got the job at Late Night with Seth Meyers because I had submitted like 35 different packets to late night shows over the course of 6 years, and then I had decided to stop doing that. And I had a talk with myself, and I was like, this is not going to happen for you, so you need to find a new dream. And then I agreed with myself that was true. And then like a day later, Amber Ruffin, a friend of mine, worked there and texted me, and she said, "Hey, I think we're hiring. Do you want to put a packet together?" And I was too embarrassed to tell her that I had let my dream die. So I said, okay, and then I got hired.
It's beautiful. Allison.
The way I got my first job and this job are the same because I worked at SNL, and before I was in Chicago for like 7 years, being a sort of classic improv loser and winner, and they have like showcases every summer when SNL comes through where you do your like 5 minutes of bits. So I did that, and then I auditioned for the show, and I hoped and kind of knew that they would also know that I shouldn't be on TV, and they did, and I got hired as a writer, and that's it.
My first job, it was first job and this job, right? My first job was I was doing Second City as a performer in Chicago, and I had never really even thought of myself as a writer or pursuing that as an avenue of employment. But I did, like when they did one of these SNL, they came through, they were hiring a new cast, and I got to audition and did not get it, but Robert Smigel, who was a legendary SNL writer, and he was executive producing the Dana Carvey show. He knew people from Chicago and asked the director to like make sure he does this. And I'll make this a short story, sorry. So I auditioned for Dana Carvey, didn't get that, but they asked me to submit as a writer. I threw some sketches together, kind of felt like I didn't know what I was doing, oh, I guess I'll try this. And thankfully I got hired, still can't believe it in some ways. And it was pretty incredible for a first job. And then this job I got from, so NFL, if you know anything about the show, is like a football pretty much themed show, and NFL Films, who are really incredible. They were the production company, and one of the main like director, showrunner guy from Films worked on this sports show that the Sklar brothers did for ESPN years ago called Cheap Seats, and I did some stuff on that, and he recommended me, and Jason Kelce is a huge Conan fan, And so I worked on Conan as well, and so just from those things, I ended up interviewing and getting the job.
My first writing job was with a late night show that I don't want to say the name because it doesn't exist, and the star has disappeared from the earth, and the whole thing might have been like an infomercial scam. It's not quite clear. So I don't want to talk any shit. But the way I got this job was that I was on an improv team at the Upper Citizens Brigade Theater with Hagel, who at the time was the receptionist at The Daily Show. We were, I think still to this day, considered the worst improv team in that theater's history. We were disbanded 4 months early. The theater just said, we just cannot justify having students paid nothing to watch you guys. But I got to know Hallie, and over time she became a writer on the show. And when when they asked her, hey, do you know anybody who might be looking to submit? We're looking for a new writer. She recommended me, and so I submitted. And that's how I got the show.
Hi, I'm Jill. My first job was at Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. That was my first writing job, and I was an SAT tutor and LSAT tutor who joyfully wrote on Twitter. And one day I got an email from someone who said very kindly, like, I asked around about who should be writing for television, and they said you, so I can tell you when there are packets. And I was like, oh, that's all I've ever wanted. And within 6 months I had the job. I had, it was my second packet. I wrote, John Oliver did at least, I think, does packets blind, so they didn't know I had no experience. I wrote a packet, then they narrowed it down to like 20 of us. They called us, they said, we want you to write a second packet, because he is nothing if not thorough. And I wrote the second packet, met John, and that was the moment that he found out that I had never written for television before, but it was too late. And I was in, and I worked there for 6 years. Now I write for a show called Have I Got News For You? Kind of the same thing, blind packet, because I guess you don't hire me if you meet me. I don't know. Anyway, and I did a packet for the first season, was not hired, and then someone left the show, and they asked me to do a second packet. I did, and they hired me.
I, like Jill, was Last Week Tonight is my first writing job, and I was the writer's assistant at Late Show about 6 years ago, and I got a DM from a burner account on Twitter that looked really fake, and they said, hey, do you want to write a packet for this show? And I was like, I know a scam when I see one. And I like told the head writers at Late Show, like, is this a trap? Are you trying to trick me? Is this a test of my fucking wit? And it wasn't, and they were like, no, you should absolutely do that. And that was it.
Jenny, you were gonna say something?
Sorry, then I remembered we're not hanging out, this is a panel.
We can all.
I forgot we're not at a bar, so I'm like, burner account, what did it look like?
Oh, no picture. It was post like the egg, but it was just a gray picture, and it was the name of someone who did work on the show, but I was like, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
I just found that right now. I could easily make this
Did
up.
you tell them afterwards, like, hey, you look like you're a boss?
Yes, and they're like, that's on purpose. Because then no one
We
reaches
only
out
want
to
the
you.
people dumb enough to fall for it.
Yeah. That was the first step.
I mean, I was gonna say they should have changed that, but like the entirety of Twitter has kind of moved in their direction, so I think that makes sense now for them to be basically a bot.
Yeah, it's a pipeline that can't function anymore.
Yeah.
So.
I think you can just picture me in a bed, like with the computer on my neck, scrolling through thousands of pages. I feel like I'm often surprised by like the number of different ways people try to spell Keenan. Like name spellings, I've seen some really crazy stuff. I feel like the two pieces of advice that I remember hearing were either like looking for kind of like what you were saying, like, oh, this packet could only have been written by this person, like we need this person's brain because we've never seen this before, or the other column of like, all of these things could go on the show right now. Like, this is so useful, you could just hit the ground running, and you don't necessarily have to do both of those, but those are like two big categories that people get excited to read.
Challenges. That being said, I thought he was a real natural, a very good performer. Like, he played things very small and very subtly, and I just was really impressed by that. Doing a sketch with the cue card is a whole different thing, but I thought he did a great job, and thankfully was really open. Being a Conan fan, he was open to almost any idea we pitched. It couldn't have been too weird. He just loved all that stuff. So in that sense, for us, it made it really easy. Rarely took any convincing or explaining what the joke was. He was just game for things, and it just, for us, became about, it was a weird experience in a good way, because we only had 5 shows. It happened very specifically during the NFL playoffs last year in January. So, and it was all just football. So it wasn't even just sports. So it was a real niche show, but again, we just had this blank slate opportunity, and just from talking to him very early on, realized he was just game for stuff. So it made it a lot easier, and it was still weird because we only had 5 opportunities to really try to get it dialed in, and all the challenges that we all know that come with trying to do a late night style show. And thankfully, I mean, here I am. But it did, it went well. We had a ton of fun. It was a crazy amount of work, but it's really a credit to him, and certainly everyone that worked on the show, that he just wanted to try things, and he was game for it. And once you have that, then everything else becomes easier, and everything else is secondary as far as performance and technical blocking and things like that. The content was at least really fun, and then it was just repetition and practice, and it's not coming back, which is too bad, but it was, I think I never really talked to him officially about it, but I heard him talking on a podcast and acknowledging just how much work goes into making a show like this, which he really enjoyed. But I think it was like, I do a podcast once a week and make a crazy amount of money. Why would I ever put myself through this? And even when we were making the show, his wife was pregnant. She was about to have their 4th child. They have 3, now 4 girls. So it was a lot of work while they were dealing with a lot of stuff in their life. But, thankfully it was a really great experience overall from that sense. And that was just because he was a cool guy that was down for whatever. It was great from that.
Short about that, though, was that Twitter and social media in general does provide an enormous amount of information and what people are thinking, but at the same time, it also provides an enormous number of takes that make it more difficult for you to provide something that's interesting and fresh to talk about. And at the same time, walls off an enormous number of things that, even if you felt like I want to be provocative and talk about this in a unthought of way, the lines of what is acceptable to say and what is not acceptable to say get formed on social media very quickly. And in that way, you not only is bringing something interesting or unspoken more difficult, but it also becomes a little bit more dangerous in terms of how people react to what you're saying.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah, it is alarming now that a lot of us could be using the same sites and be having completely different experiences on those sites. So getting your news from somewhere doesn't necessarily mean that you're seeing the same stuff. But it is a real loss for like breaking news. I always used to turn to Twitter first to be like, well, what's happening? And then secondary, what is the reaction to it? Now I watch the Democracy Now! Amy Goodman says that there are 3 titles to that show: Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.com, The War and Peace Report. I don't actually know what it's called, but every day they put one out, and that's how I hear about, like, I don't know, a bunch of war crimes that nobody else is talking about. Democracy Now! Usually mentions it. And then local stuff like The City and Hellgate, I really love both of those outlets. 404 Media, The Intercept for some kind of like deeper, scarier stories. I'd love like a recommendation for something light. I'd love to subscribe to something.
Newsmax has a lot of very funny things these days. Newsmax, their anchors are funny, they're charming, they're very, very, like C-team for Fox News, so it's a lot of funny people who have not quite yet mastered how to say something without saying it. So there's a lot of guys being like, I think the president should be racist. And it's like, okay, don't, you work on this for a little longer. We'll get you polished up later.
It's important to have a safe space to fail first.
Yes.
There's always vulture.com, by the way, just as a...
Well,
We're all describing packets, which I think are a sort of constant truth of comedy writing, but I think also feel mysterious to people who are trying to understand, like, what is this packet you speak of? What does it contain? How do I make, what is a good one? What is a bad one? So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about when you have to approach the idea, or if you were trying to tell somebody how to approach the idea of a packet, what would you say, like, definitely don't do this, here is a thing that might actually be helpful?
I have a very strong opinion about this, and I'm very happy to tell.
Go for it.
I think a lot of people, when they're writing, especially for late night shows, especially ones that have like a political slant, feel like they want to write very very well articulated, informed opinions about the news, about their political ideology, about an issue they care about, and we absolutely do not find that useful in any way whatsoever. The thing that we are looking for is jokes. We want a ton of jokes that are very funny, that hit hard, that are structured to hit hard, have a strong punchline. We will come up with the opinions. Jon Stewart will come up with the opinion. Our other correspondent hosts, Jordan, Desi, Ronnie, Michael, Josh, they will come up with the opinion they want to have. We'll have a conversation about it. Your primary job, and what we look for in a writer, is being very, very funny, very, very hard jokes in a voice that the host could say but wouldn't think to say. Does that make sense? It should be the kind of jokes that a host can say, but that they wouldn't necessarily think to say, but you have the voice that can say it. That is what we will take that 1,000,000 times over somebody who has the most brilliant Rachel Maddow-esque snark and outlined point every single time. Every single time.
I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I think another thing with packets is I think when I was writing them, I thought that the job was to copy the host's voice as closely as possible. And then I think I almost was like mimicking, and I think that was a mistake. And I went to a panel one time, and I heard Seth and the producer of our show, the EP of our show, talk about packets, and they were talking about how they wanted to hear people's voice. And I think that to me, the best packet is the intersection of the two, where it's like it sounds like the show, but you have also inserted your voice into it. So it's like it sounds like the show, but it was like Zhubin was saying, but it's a joke we haven't heard before.
100%.
And if you can find the place where your point of view and the host's voice meet, I think that's the best packet. The other thing I'll say is I feel like when I was running Amber Ruffin's show, I read a bunch of packets, and I was surprised by how many packets. This is just such a tiny thing, but would involve things you cannot do on television. And then that just makes you feel like, okay, this person doesn't know how to work in television, which is fine. Everybody has to have their first job somewhere. But it made me feel like, okay, I'm gonna have a lot to teach this person. So just little things like swear words, slurs, things like 1,000 doves come from the sky, and then they all do the Macarena. You're like, I can't, like, this doesn't.
I want to see that show. That sounds great.
The show with the doves and the rainbows. But yeah, I think that too, just think like, can this be done? Can this actually be done? And then that sounds so silly, but that is a thing I saw over and over again.
On some level, I think you're not right for every show.
Yes.
And it's weirdly, I have only done packets for shows that didn't exist yet. So I was always inventing what I thought the show was. And it is guessing their voice, but also I think something people don't talk about a lot is that, yes, you are taking on this host's voice, but especially at the beginning, they're also taking on your voice. And so it's important to get a little bit of that in there, and just know that, like, not every show is for you, and sometimes you're gonna put you into that, and that's gonna be exactly what that host is looking for. Original things it could be later. So I think we're just, I don't know, I at least always feel like slightly frantically trying to do the television show, and then someone else gets to figure out how to make it into something else.
I feel like a lot of us also have live audiences, and like you can't be thinking about anyone other than them, because if it doesn't make them laugh, then it can't be on the show. So like, because it still has to like pass that hurdle, then I feel like you're never thinking about anything else really.
Okay, here's a question that's gonna sound glib, but I do mean it sincerely, which is Trump funny?
Yeah, you have to acknowledge that, or Yeah, he's very funny. He's very funny both intentionally and unintentionally. I don't think you can deny that. The guy knows how to tell a joke. The guy knows how to be mean in a very funny way. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember his joke about Michael Bloomberg, but I think that almost like single-handedly ended his primary candidacy when he was like making fun of him and then just ducked down doing an impression of him. I mean, the comedic timing was just perfect. Like the guy, and I think that's difficult because there are a lot of times when you want to use a clip of Trump speaking, both to kind of make a point about what he's saying, but also because he's very funny unintentionally a lot of times when he's trying to be serious, when he's trying to be presidential. When he is making a joke, you can't use those clips. Those jokes are usually like they're first off you can't make a joke off someone's joke, and secondly, like the joke is he's a good enough joke maker that your only reasonable reaction is if you don't agree with what he's saying is outrage. And nothing is less funny than being outraged. And I think that generates a lot of it generates difficulty if you are a show that is that is disagreeing with him on a point and trying to make a mockery of what he's saying or of his logic, because he can be very funny.
I'm sorry, please.
Go ahead.
I think that a distinction for me is that I think you're right that he's funny, he's very charismatic, has good timing. But I think there was a difference between him being funny and him being good for comedy. And I feel like that's the thing people ask me about a lot. They're always like, wow, your job must be pretty easy these days. Trump's great for comedy. And I think it's the opposite. Because I think so much of comedy is heightening, and he's so extreme all the time. That so often I'll read a story about him, whether it's extremely bad, extremely absurd, extremely whatever. He's so extreme all the time that it feels like there's nowhere to go. Like, I don't know how you write about it, because it's already the version I would make up as a joke.
Yeah, he's a cartoon person. And recently I don't know about you guys, I was about hitting my limit with this guy. I've had just about enough of Mr. Donald Trump, and I thought that's it, he's not funny.
I can go 10 more years. I can go a bit longer. I think he'll be doing it regardless, so I think
Well, good news.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not gonna find him funny anymore, I'm done. And then I saw a clip of him on the plane where he was like, have a safe flight. You know why I say that? Because I'm on the flight, otherwise I wouldn't care. I'm like,
Hit after hit after hit.
yeah, it's funny.
I think he's funny, but I don't think he laughs. I don't think he's ever enjoyed anyone else's humor.
Oh, no. Because you'd have to laugh at someone else's joke, you have to lower your status for a moment, and he would never.
And you'd have to listen.
Both things, yes.
I don't think he's funny at all. Like, I really don't. Like, I think there's nothing, anytime he's doing anything like that, to me, it's just the worst version. It's like watching some shitty fucking hack who thinks he's funny because there's so much confidence in it, and there's so much confidence in that delivery, and it's like, what a fucking asshole. And I don't mean that just beyond that I think he is. I just feel like that confidence is so unearned when it comes to him trying to be funny, and it's so, besides enraging, I just do not, that's the thing. It'd be one thing, let me use this as an example, and maybe it's not a good one. So someone like Gavin McInnes, the guy from Vice who started Proud Boys, like, I remember when he took that turn, and I was friends with him. Very good friends, and I really liked him a lot. And then when all that shit happened and people were like, he's just this wannabe comedian, blah, 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 I disagreed with that completely. I thought he was extremely funny. Really smart guy, really funny dude, and then everything else was terribly unfortunate. Trump, I just don't even think it's nothing. It's so, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say it. I just really don't think it's funny. I think it's terrible comedy. I'm not even looking for the applause, but I appreciate it. Could have been louder. And it could have lasted anyway. So yeah, I just really don't. I don't find anything, and I'd say it, and I would say, like, yeah, it can be funny. I just don't, and that's the other thing that makes me so mad about it is that kind of, it's that kind of comedy that I personally love. That that the overconfident, smug asshole can be such a funny archetype, but God, I just don't.
I will say one thing I love about Trump is when he tries to, when he's being very petty, but takes it one beat further than he should. He was on a plane with these two women these reporters he was talking to, and one of them asked him a question about some event he was going to, and he was very mad about the question. And so he turns to that one woman and goes like, "Well, I'm going to go I'm going to go to a ballroom where it's going to be very classy, something you would know nothing about. All right, goodbye, everybody." Then realized there was another woman there, and so he goes, "Goodbye, everybody. You too," and then leaves. Like she was part of that, like something you know nothing about, and it was so petty and so like I'm trying to shoot everybody here, and it was the kind of like it was a kind of like glimpse into like that pettiness, that like bottomless well of pettiness that I find very revealing, and also in a very real way endearing. And I know that's a charged word, but there is an element of woundedness when he says things like that. It's like, oh, I see where this all comes from. I get it, you know.
It is satisfying to know that he has never known a moment's peace, and probably never will.
We'll see. That ballroom looks pretty good. We'll see. When he stands in that ballroom, I think he'll find it then.